but one of these days.
Okay. All right. Rob Manfred. He said some stuff. He said some interesting stuff. We have some audio, Rob Manfred.
Talking about MLB expansion.
Yes.
I guess we should specify.
You got to decide that you're willing to expand. That decision, how easy or hard it is, depends in part on how much central revenue you generate, right? And how the owners are going to react to creating 2 additional shares of that central revenue. Assuming you get over that hump that they want to expand, then it's where, right? What 2 cities do you take? And you have to get through that. And then once the cities are in place, you can start thinking about really, I see 2 huge issues. One is travel. 162 games in 186 days with all the travel that goes along with that, particularly with the schedule we're playing now, right?
Now that you have an
It's
unbalanced schedule.
more balanced.
Sure.
That's a huge, more balanced.
Balanced
It's
schedule.
still unbalanced, but it's more balanced than it
Yes.
used to be, as opposed to West Coast playing East Coast in those early rounds.
Any potential thinking of when this timing on this, and obviously this is intertwined with the labor and media that we discussed.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to, when I think about the things, I'd like to there's no way we're getting 2 more teams on the field before I'm done. I'd like to pick the teams before I'm done.
That's interesting. That's an interesting finish to that. I'd like to pick the teams, but they're not going to be playing before I'm done.
Which I believe Manfred said 2029 he's retiring.
I was about to do something, celebrate, and I had to calm myself down.
No, well, let's hold it. Let's hear him out. I mean, if he brings Major League Baseball to Sacramento, not counting the A's, Major League Baseball to Sacramento, then maybe we'll be naming a street corner for him the same way we named David J. Stern Walk, where the Kings Arena is.
It's interesting because obviously we're talking more and more about relocation, expansion, really becoming realignment for Major League Baseball. That seems to be what we're talking about the most. And where this potentially is going to go as to why previously things that Rob Manfred has said has led people to believe that the end of the National League and American League is on its way.
Oh, it's going to happen.
Eventually, it will, 100%.
It might happen in 3 years, 5 years, or 10 years, but it is going to end.
I see it within 5 to 10. That if I'm a betting man, which I'm not, I would look at 5 to 10 being the timeline, because I think they pick it, as Rob Manfred says, in the next 3 to 5 years, and then realignment with everything. Okay, these are the teams, and they will begin playing in 2028, 2029, whatever that time frame is. And when they begin play, we shift. That's the shift. So I see it in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. Well, I also think Manfred's making the point, right? There's no way those teams are going to be able to play by 2029. So does that mean their first seasons are going to be 2031, 2032? The other part of it is in all of these cities, they're going to have to build new stadiums, whether it's Nashville, Portland, Salt Lake City, Sacramento. I know San Antonio has been mentioned, but less so than those other. Raleigh, North Carolina has been mentioned, but I think Nashville is going to get the East team. So
I do too.
All of these stadiums are going to have to get built. And if the A's have taught us anything, unless you got the money, it could take a long time for these stadiums to get built.
What intrigues me about Nashville getting a team would become a very direct rival to the Atlanta Braves. Like how Atlanta is going to posture themselves because of what we talk about in San Francisco Giants beginning to own almost what would be just south of Fresno all the way up. Like all the way up. You just cut California that way and go, okay, downward is Dodgers, Padres, Angels, everything in north is all San Francisco Giants. Right now, the Atlanta Braves have an entire stranglehold of the Southeast. So you bring in Nashville, you end that for the Atlanta Braves, at least in the Nashville, Tennessee area, they will root for their team. And maybe it's going to take 5, 10, 15, 20 years because parents, they're going to be still Braves fans. They're just going to be, oh, okay, I'm just going to be a Nashville whatever fan. Intrigues me, Portland, Salt Lake City, and Sacramento. Those are really intriguing because Salt Lake City already has plans.
They have an ownership group in place.
Portland has renderings.
Yes.
And Sacramento isn't there.
We don't think. But this brings us to why we're talking about this today, is that when you had to leave, unfortunately, what was that, earlier this week, when Chris Watkins had to leave earlier this week because of him being
sick. He's a little sick.
Whitey filled in for me and brought up the point that he also mentioned on his show later, that he had been told from someone in the know that behind the scenes, they are working on potential locations, potential funding plans for their Sacramento expansion bid. Now, they're not ready to announce anything. They haven't gotten to that stages, but the groundwork is being laid behind the scenes to potentially submit a relocation bid to Major League Baseball, potentially in 2028, 2029, after basically after the lockout that is inevitable in 2027, when baseball can actually start to talk about expansion in a realistic manner. That Sacramento is actually trying to put together. I believe Whitey said there were 3 or potentially 4 different locations they were exploring for potentially building the stadium. Again, it's in the preliminary stages. They're not going to announce anything, but this work is being done behind the scenes to potentially make an expansion bid for the Sacramento area.
And I've heard the similar rumblings. What's intriguing is obviously the rail yards are getting a stadium there for the Sac Republic, right? Republic FC.
Which will be done in 2027.
Yeah, for early. That USL season. They should be opening their season there in 2027.
Yes, which is before baseball would consider expansion, because 2027 is when probably the season's going to get postponed a bit because of a labor lockout.
It probably going to get postponed quite a bit, it seems like, this upcoming time in Major League Baseball, because there's so many things that are being, again, just no knock on, obviously, Sutter Health Park, but that's going to be a very huge topic of conversation of, hey, you guys didn't take the players' safety, luxury, whatever the argument is going to be. You guys didn't take that into account when sending them to a minor league ballpark. We understand the Tampa Bay Rays situation because it was a natural thing, right?
And the Rays are planning to go back next year.
And they're not planning on playing in the minor league ballpark because they're selling it out for the next 4 years. But you look at the Athletics and what that has kind of come around, like it makes it all interesting to see how it begins to process and how Sacramento begins to posture themselves for the potential bid, because I think Portland is a great bid. I think Portland is really, they are ready. I think because of the NHL team that now is in Salt Lake City, who they've been named. I don't know why it's slipping on my mind.
Mammoth, I think.
Mammoth, yeah.
I want to call them the Yeti, but it's not for copyright reasons.
Yeah, so it's the Mammoth, and them getting that franchise, like it's where the excuse Kroenke made to get out of St. Louis, which was the city of St. Louis doesn't have the amount of money coming in, the physical years. I think at the time was St. Louis brought in $600 billion a year. And in order, apparently Kroenke, in order to sustain a football team, a baseball team, all of that, they needed to net, I think it was like $700 billion or whatever the number that Kroenke kind of obviously made sure was not the right ones in terms of what they already brought in. That is going to be a topic of conversation too. Can Salt Lake City sustain that amount of professional teams in that city?
Well, and to the same point, Whitey brought up on the air that like Portland was in their plan, their proposal, they were going to fund the public aspect of it from what is proverbially being called a jock tax, which is basically taxing the athletes who come through Portland. And recently there's been belief that that would not pass, or that Major League Baseball would not go for that potentially as the funding mechanism for the stadium, which, again, they're not at expansion talks yet, but that's something Portland might have to address down the line, is how they're going to be financing whatever the new stadium looks like. So no one has a perfect proposal.
No, there is no slam dunk currently out there for Major League Baseball. One of the things that you also pay attention to in terms of when you pick an expansion city, one of the major factors you have to pay attention to is also growth potential of that city. Where is that city going? Is it getting younger or is it getting older? Is the demographic that you want to cater to, is that demo growing in numbers or is it shrinking in numbers? And those are things that obviously the NBA is paying attention to, right? NBA likes to expand into young markets because that's who's the biggest client of the NBA. In terms of Major League Baseball, that actually shifts really drastically because it's more about families than it is about a young 21-year-old. And this is more of that 30 and over, 30 to 50, 30 to 55 of obviously people who are going to be spending money and going and getting season tickets and doing all of those things.
Children.
And bringing young children to the game. So as you put all of that into perspective, and obviously I'm not a Sacramento native, I'm a Valley native. And from my perspective, without having any numbers in front of me and having any of the statistics when it comes to age and demo and all of those things, especially what Major League Baseball is looking for, because that was the problem with ESPN and the conversations that they ended up having, is like, hey, in the demo we are attacking, we're actually killing it. That's what they're showing ESPN, right? So in this way, I look at it and going, Sacramento is growing right now. It is growing pretty quickly. And from, again, an outsider coming in, you can see how many Bay Area people are obviously making the move here because of expense and all of those things. I think we're seeing a good influx of new people into the city, like it or hate it or love it. That, I think, is starting to bode well for Sacramento in terms of a potential expansion team coming here because the city is growing, again, from my vantage point, without having the numbers. Now, we could look it up right now, and the reality is that Sacramento's population dropped 0.5% last year. I don't know. I don't have the number in front of me from my perception.
But to that point, every city in California has experienced a decline in population, but California or Sacramento's is like less than other places, basically. To your point, it's a really good one about who is moving into Sacramento and the demographic baseball is going for. I bring this back to Nashville, who appears to be basically a lock to get one of the expansion teams. Since like 2000, really since the financial crisis, but since 2010, Nashville has experienced this
insane boom.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly. Just influx of people moving to Nashville. The mostly young families, young people. It's kind of become Nash Vegas in some ways too. People joke because you get this giant tourism economy, but you also have family homes basically around the perimeter. And Nashville's demographics have changed so much since 20 years ago that you have just this influx of new people moving to Nashville that will become your base for potentially a Nashville expansion team. Sacramento is in the weird position of having previously a lot of A's fans, now that healthy mix of Giants and whatever's left of the A's fan base, like you talked about. And it's, again, only 120 miles away from San Francisco, where the Giants play. Maybe that geographically,
Seattle, right? Like you put it all into perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And maybe that's a tough situation, is the geographic proximity to San Francisco. But I think Sacramento is probably just as likely to support a Major League Baseball team as Portland or Salt Lake City, if I had to guess. But it all comes down to the proposal and the financing agreements and the ability to build a stadium, which are big. Sacramento's starting from behind the starting block, trying to get all of that in order.
So just so I can give everybody information, since 2010, and this is data numbered all the way to 2023. Anything past that is a projection of where they could potentially be. But in 2010, the city of Sacramento was sitting at about 467,000 people. In 2022, again, that's before the projections begin, it was at 525,000 people. So the growth is there. And as I'm looking at some of the demos and some of the other aspects that go into it, which is families and all of that, Sacramento is at about a 50% marriage kind of rate in family income, and all those things I think are benefiting the conversation. So expansion in those terms is getting really, really interesting. We'll take a break. We'll be back. We went over a little bit there, but it's okay. You're listening to the Allen Stiles Show, Sactown Sports, 1140.
The IRS finally caught